Hello and welcome to this training video for the Etorch3. The Etorch3 is a fully electric dryer and field sheet activator. It replaces the gas torch for drying and fusing heat-activated bituminous membranes while being flame and gas-free. The Etorch3 must be used in conjunction with the user guide and the manufacturer's installation instructions. Systems and methods used in this training video will vary on each project, so always refer to the manufacturer for technical advice on the installation of the system you are using. The Etorch3 in this video will be used alongside the Seeker Shield self-adhesive membrane. Before you start using the eTorch, you first must complete some basic checks. Make sure the eTorch is on a stable, flat surface. If you have to complete works on an angled surface, take care when moving and setting up the equipment to ensure the unit remains upright and stable. The hose must not be wrapped tight when stored. This can be packed loosely on the equipment. If the hose is kinked, untwist the hose until it can be coiled up easily. Never pull the eTorch like a hoover. If you need to move the equipment, have another operative move the trolley with you. When picking up or moving the eTorch, only use the red trolley handle or the bottom of the trolley itself. Never pick up the eTorch by the hose, the eTorch cradle handles, or any of the buttons and switches on the panel. At the end of the work session, make sure there are no holes or cuts in the hose and that the hose is wound correctly and secured to the eTorch. You should be wearing 5-point PPE. Gloves are required for operating the equipment. Never point the eTorch at yourself or any other operatives when in use, as this could cause burns or injury. Never stick anything down the end of the eTorch at any time, as this could cause internal damage or serious injury. The eTorch air blade does get hot when in use. Always use gauntlets or gloves. Only disconnect the air blade after it has cooled down. The control box is only for authorized users, electricians or suitably trained persons, and imperial thermal technicians. You may be required to enter the cabinet if the breakers have tripped or imperial thermal instructs you to do so. It is recommended you consult with imperial thermal first, and you should never open the cabinet unless supervised by an imperial thermal operative or suitably trained persons. To open and close the cabinet, use the keys supplied with the equipment. Always close and lock the cabinet after you have been inside the control box. Always keep the keys in a safe place. Spares can be supplied at an extra cost if these get lost. Check the service light. If this is on, it is recommended that the eTorch is booked in for a service at the earliest convenience. The service light will not stop the machine from working and only turns on after 150 hours of use. The machine must be stored at the end of each day in a dry, secure location. The eTorch air blade can get dirty when it has been used excessively. If the air blade is dirty, a clean down is required. Remove any dirt from the air blade nozzle with a wire brush or a cleaning cloth. If you require any further information or technical advice regarding the Etorch3, you can contact us direct at www.imperialthermal.co.uk, or you can call us on 01376 330 582. First, make sure you are wearing the correct PPE as seen earlier in this video. The eTorch is secured to the chassis by 2 bungee cords. Take off the bungees, then uncoil the hose so it is on the floor. Then remove the eTorch from the cradle and place it upright on the floor as well. The blade can be placed to one side for now. When the eTorch is in use, the hose must not be obstructed, cut, kinked or stood on at any point. Never drop, kick or drag the eTorch along the floor or by the hose at any point. Once the eTorch is removed from the chassis and placed on the floor, uncoil the power lead on the back. This is required before every operation. Now plug in the eTorch into your power supply. This must be a 3-phase supply with an earth and a neutral. Turn the isolator on. If there is no sign of power, make sure the emergency stop is released. Once the isolator is switched on, allow 15 to 20 seconds for the eTorch to start up. After this time, you will see the white power lights turn on. The other indicators will turn on as well, depending which mode you are in. In the event of an emergency, press the red e-stop button. This is not intended to turn off the machine at the end of day, so always use the isolator during normal use. The indicators are displayed as dry, activate and sockets. Dry and activate feature a flashing light to show what mode you are in. Sockets feature a solid blue light. To start drying, select dry mode on the panel. Then put on your air blade. This is contoured to the ground, so make sure it isn't on upside down. Once slotted onto the eTorch, use the band clamp to secure it to the nozzle. You are now ready to start. The temperature of the Etorch 3 is preset to 400 degrees, and it can dry a variety of different surfaces and materials. To start drying, click the set button once on the trigger. Pull and hold the trigger and you'll hear the fan start. After 5 seconds, the heat will come on. Remember that as long as you hold the trigger, the heat will remain on. Place the blade on the ground and use a back and forth motion. This will disperse existing surface water. Then, as you come back, it draws the moisture out of the surface and dries it. This is by far the most efficient method to dry a surface. Due to the way this technology works, the surface will continue to dry after you have passed over it with the air blade. Keep the blade moving and never hold the blade in the same position for extended amounts of time. As soon as you let go of the trigger, the heat will turn off and the cool down cycle will begin. This is automatic and will last for 40 seconds. After this time, the fan will turn off automatically. Never turn off the equipment immediately after letting go of the trigger. Always remember to let the fan cool the eTorch and the fan to run on until it turns off automatically. To begin activating your self-adhesive or heat-activated membranes, switch the eTorch to Activate mode. Activate mode allows the user to raise or lower the airspeed coming out of the eTorch. If you have the airspeed too high, you could mark or damage the surface. By lowering the airspeed, this will remove the chance of blowing off the surface chippings or marking the field sheets. You can test this with offcuts before you use this mode as shown here. Once you have your preferred speed selected, you can activate the surface. Go over the top of the field sheet just like dry mode, using the same technique as before. Once you do so, the energy created by the eTorch will start the bonding process immediately. In very cold weather, you may need multiple passes to start the activation process. Activation of the second layer will use the same method as used for the first layer. Activating the cap sheet also uses the same technique as the first and second layer. You may want to reduce the airspeed to its slower setting, as this will prevent the chippings from being blown off and marking the sheet, as demonstrated here. Repeat the activation process using the same methods as the previous layers. Remember to select the desired speed for activation before you begin, to prevent membrane marking and to prevent chipping removal. The socket mode allows the operative to use 230 volt equipment on site. This will allow the users to utilise more powerful handheld hot air blowers to complete detail works. To use the sockets mode, simply plug in your 230 volt device into one of the sockets on the front of the control panel. Turn the switch to sockets mode. This will show up as a constant blue light. Now you can use your 230 volt equipment. You can use up to 3 hot air blowers at the same time, but do remember that you cannot use the eTorch whilst in this mode. The maximum rating for these hot air blowers are 16 amps. And there you have it. You are now fully trained on the Etorch 3. Final reminders for running the machine are: always do a pre-check of the equipment before starting. Check that there are no holes or cuts in the hose and make sure the couplers are connected. Make sure to set the machine on a flat, stable area and always set up the eTorch before plugging in the equipment. Make sure the blade is on securely and correctly before use. Press set, pull and hold the trigger to turn on the heat when in dry or activate mode. Always allow the eTorch to cool down automatically before turning off the machine. Never point the eTorch at other operatives, yourself or the equipment. Always consult the manufacturer's instructions on how to lay and install the self-adhesive membranes. If you have any questions or queries, don't hesitate to get in contact with us. The user guide contains troubleshooting tips, further information on care and handling, and a breakdown of this training video. We value your feedback and would love to hear about your experience with our equipment. Any questions regarding the equipment and information on all our other products for roofing and construction, they can be located at www.imperialthermal.co.uk.